to this week's episode of the Mixtape with Scott. I'm your host, Scott Cunningham. It's cold outside. Thanksgiving is now done, and we're in the home stretch for the holidays, which I think you know what that means. You're now officially allowed to play Sufjan Stevens' Christmas album, Songs for Christmas. If you peaked a little bit early, that's okay. You're probably going to be fine. You're probably not going to be on it is technically a naughty list violation, but you're probably fine. So this week's guest on the podcast is a young assistant professor and econometrician at Brandeis University, research fellow at Institute of Labor Economics, IZA, named Tymon Słoczyński. He's an excellent young econometrician. Really have enjoyed reading his papers. And I've wanted him on here because of the broader story of causal inference, as well as just getting to know Tymon myself. I've been on a kick reading through a lot of econometrics papers the last year that you might just sort of boil down to what's called the unconfoundedness methods. These are methods that usually depend upon covariates for estimating treatment effects. And in the history of economics, particularly going back through Princeton industrial relations section in the 70s, there was an economist there, labor economist named Ron Oaxaca, and he had developed a method for studying discrimination in labor markets, as had in the same year Alan Blinder. They kind of independently came up with this method for discrimination. It was based on a kind of decomposition method where you would take two groups, you'd look at some outcome like wages. This would be like black and white groups or men and women. You'd look at their wages, and you see how much of it could be explained by the covariates and how much couldn't be explained by the covariates. And, if it couldn't be explained by the covariates, then you might be able to tag it as discrimination. It was once, I think very, very common to see people do these kinds of decompositions. It turns out, though, that it is, in fact, a treatment effects estimator called regression adjustment. Pat Klein has written about it in a 2011 Papers and Proceedings. Jeff Wooldridge has written about it, and so has Tymon. And he's written a lot about it, a decent amount about it. And it's led him to think about, regressions in general. Basic regressions with covariates and what they mean and what are you estimating? How do you interpret the coefficient? And are we interpreting it correctly? And so on my Substack, I did like 3 Substacks about Tymon's 2022 Review of Economics and Statistics article about OLS, trying to basically come up with a simulation that would do it right, as well as just provide some promotion of the paper and help people understand it. But it's really important because regressions with covariates are probably the single most common causal method. If you think about it, probably most people, if they have anything at all relevant for causality, what do they have? They have a stats class where they learned regressions and they learned about multivariate regression. So anything we can add to helping people understand that is probably going to go a really long way. And so, this is a part of this broader trend that you've been seeing over the last 5 years of the regressions that you've been running when you add in there heterogeneous treatment effects and you explicitly start modeling it in that Rubin potential outcomes framework, things don't look like you thought they did. And so it's a really important paper. So that's the backdrop. That's the backdrop of why I was thinking about having Tymon. I just really wanted to talk to him about all this work he's been doing and pick his brain. Because I didn't really see this stuff coming. I've been really surprised because I'm not an econometrician. I'm always kind of caught off guard a little bit, by whether it's diff and diff, whether it's stuff with IV, whether it's like, stuff like this OLS stuff. I've always been like, really caught off guard. And then I just kind of dive into it and learn as much as I can. And so that's it. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Tymon. I hope you have a great week and go ahead and put on some Sufjan Stevens. I hope you have a good day. Okay. Well, it is my pleasure to have on the podcast someone I've been looking forward to talking to for a while. Uh, Tymon Słoczyński. Did I say it right? Okay. Tymon. How do I say it?
First name would be more like Tymon.
Tymon. Okay.
And last name is super close. It's Słoczyński.
Słoczyński. Tymon. Okay, good. All right, and then I'll do it right. Tymon. Tymon, tell us for the sake of the listener, your job title and who pays your salary.
So I'm an assistant professor of economics at Brandeis University in Waltham, Massachusetts.
Awesome. Well, it's great to meet in person. I've been a big fan for a while. I've been bugging you by
great to meet you.
Forever.
No, it's great, and I really appreciate the invitation. It's like a surreal to see myself, with so many really prominent people. So I'm really happy, and thank you for the invitation.
Good. Well, then one day when you're one of these big prominent people, you'll say, and Scott Cunningham let me on. Scott Cunningham gave me my first chance on podcast on primetime podcast world. Okay. All right. So what's it? Let's start off with the icebreaker. So tell me, what's a vacation that you've taken maybe when you were younger that you still kind of every now and then think about for whatever reason?
So I'd say it's probably maybe less of a single vacation than kind of like a routine my family had for many, many years, which is that we would rent a house or a floor in a house somewhere in the mountains in southern Poland, not far away from where we lived. And my mom and I, my brother and I would like spend much of the summer there. My dad would join us on weekends, like 2 weeks or so towards the end of the summer, and we would just spend there like many, many weeks. It was like much longer than, my typical adult vacations, much more so. And just, have a very nice, relaxed summer, a lot of walks, book reading, swimming in the river, hikes when I was getting older. So like a very, very nice sort of, relaxed routine that pretty much, repeated every year for most of my childhood.
Oh, wow. That was the whole summer?
Most of the summer, yes.
Oh,
so like, definitely more than 1 month, probably never full 2 months, but it could be close to that.
Was there other people that would also go to that same location?
Not really, no. So it would be us just renting something and just having a very, very nice relaxed time for pretty long.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
And returning to the same place. So we basically as just two places that we repeatedly would go to throughout my childhood. First one, then they kind of kicked us out. Not that we were bad, we were good,
right.
But like they needed it for other purposes. The place. And we switched places.
And you said that's because did you say it's because your dad was an academic?
So my dad was an academic. He is a retired history professor. But so when I say I didn't say anything about my dad before, except that he was joining us on weekends and then for just a week or two at the end of the summer. But the reason he was doing that rather than spending the entire summer was that he was catching up on his research over the summer, as we all do.
Oh, okay.
So
got it. Where was this? Where were y'all going in the summers?
I mean, I could give you two village names in Polish mountains, which would not say anything except if somebody was listening who was Polish, but they wouldn't probably know it either. But it was like, I grew up, there is this city, second biggest city in Poland, in southern Poland called Kraków, which is like the former capital, 16th century and earlier. So an old, very old city. It's close to the mountains, so the places we went to would be like a 1-2 hour drive south of our hometown.
Wow,
my hometown.
What does the beautiful parts of Poland look like? Actually, I've never been to Poland. What is it like?
Well, I mean, a lot of people would tell you that one of the top places to go would be my hometown, actually.
Really?
And I know many people who would like, that would be one
Wow.
of the specific places to go. It's like, I don't know, people would say sometimes it kind of resembles a little bit like a small Prague, like Prague in the Czech Republic.
Oh yeah.
It's a medieval old town. Many old Gothic churches, university established in the second half of 14th century, like a castle that's on top of everything, so to speak. Very, very nice place to just, spend some time. A very, very, beautiful old Jewish quarter that was, in disrepair when I was a kid, but then sort of became like a big, restaurant and bar center for the whole city. In a very, very, very interesting place to go to. I would say, some parts of the mountains in Poland, like for example, I have this poster behind me, which is like the most prominent mountain range, a little bit further than we would go. That I think is really beautiful. And when I went to Yosemite for the first time, I felt like my first. So I was bottom of El Capitan, and I was like looking, and I was thinking, okay, I really grew up in a nice place, because I don't actually think that this is so much better than that place. I mean, I really loved Yosemite. After like 2 days or something, I thought, okay, this is really something super remarkable. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it's comparable, I think.
Wow.
In many places.
Did you feel as a kid that you were around just something so incredibly beautiful? You grew up? It sounds like you grew up kind of loving nature a lot. Am I putting words in your mouth?
I think I did. I kind of, it's difficult to say to what extent I appreciated that it was a great place that I was growing up. I definitely felt, so my hometown is a very interesting place in the sense that it's full of people who are super proud about it. That it's like this wonderful city, wonderful place, and whatnot. And I think when I was growing up, when I was a teenager, and I was sort of being critical of things and sort of trying to distance myself from I don't know, things growing up and whatnot, I kind of felt for a long time, and maybe I still do, that sometimes that level of pride is a little bit too much, meaning there are some things that maybe, we're proud of that, maybe we shouldn't be that proud of in the end or whatever. But the fact that it's beautiful, the place and, the mountains, and I think it's definitely not something I would question. So I definitely had these conversations, people like, I'll be exaggerating a lot, but kind of, we're the center of the world, so to speak. And people didn't really mean that, but some were getting close, I think.
Wow. So your family is from Poland and have been from Poland for a long time? Like you could like go back and you just sort of know, like it's not like they've ever moved there, like your grandparents or something? They've always been from there?
Not that I would know of, but then pretty much my entire family, 2 or 3 generations back, were pretty poor and lived in small villages, were like small farmers, so to speak. So it's not like you have like a long track record. Maybe you would if you went back to some of the, I don't know, like all sort of baptism books and whatever, because they were, to the extent that I'm aware, they were all Catholic, so you would have like records. But I don't know, the family memory doesn't span further than I don't know, maybe my great grandparents.
In Poland, this is completely random. It's but in Poland, is it common that everybody sort of is from Poland and then their parents are from Poland? And it's like you're around people that have just always lived in that area where you are, or is it dynamic and you see lots of migration into and out of Poland?
When I was growing up, it was definitely extremely homogeneous, no question about that. And it's a legacy of World War II, where, the Jewish population was murdered or migrated after the war. And, the Ukrainian population In the east, the border shifted such that most of the Ukrainian population stayed in what was formerly the Soviet Union. Those who stayed within Polish borders were forcibly moved to other parts of the country. The German population in the west, in the lands that were previously Germany, now it's Poland, were forcibly removed to what is now Germany. So yes, I mean, within post-Polish borders, the population in the 1990s when I was growing up was extremely homogeneous. Right now it's different because yes, Poland has been in the European Union for like about 20 years. There's a lot of migration, especially even before the war in Ukraine, a lot of migration from Ukraine, but now especially so, but also from other parts of the world. I think there's a lot of lot of people coming for jobs from, I think, Asia right now, which is something I did not wasn't the case at all when I was growing up. I mean, of course, there were like, during the communist era. There were like, many student exchanges with countries around the world that were sort of aligned with the, Eastern Bloc. So, those people would travel and sometimes they would stay after and then they would have kids. And, yes, I mean, there's small numbers, very small numbers, I think, when I was growing up, not now.
Got it. So your father was a professor of history at the school that you ended up going to college, or a different school?
No. I left. So this is my first, like one of my first, like, big sort of decisions of doing something that was unusual in my hometown. I left my hometown for college. So I went to Warsaw, the capital city. The vast majority of my friends, of my classmates from high school stayed. So I did not go. So he retired. He was a professor in that medieval university in Krakow. But I did not go to college there. And they actually have. They do have like a Department of Economics now, but it's not a place you would go to study economics if you like really thought about it a lot of time, because in Poland they have this system, I think, of like schools of economics, which is kind of like LSE-like, so to speak, like specialized universities in economics and business. And it's usually the best places to go to study economics in Poland. I think another choice would be the University of Warsaw, which is like the only, like, I think, general university with a very strong economics department. But I went to the Warsaw School of Economics.
I see. Okay, great. So yeah, just now I'm piecing together, your father's a historian and then you're an economic historian as well as an econometrician.
I'm not sure if many economic historians would, totally accept me as one of their own. I, wrote 2 or 3 papers with economic history data, and I like economic history a lot. But I haven't been doing that for like 3-4 years. So
okay. But you have
I don't have like a very strong, I think, say coursework background in his economic history, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay. So what kind of student were you in high school? What was your high school experience like?
So I went to a very special high school in a way, which was so in Poland at the high school level, you no longer have to be admitted in every single place, public high school that you that is local to you, as it would be at the primary or secondary school level. It's really like everything is, grades based. Like you sort of graduate primary or secondary school, and then you apply to places, and they, accept you or not accept you based on your grades and stuff. So I went to a place that was considered, one of the best high schools in the whole country, definitely the best in southern Poland. And I honestly had a mixed experience because I felt, parts of it didn't really live up to the fame. I think there was like a lot of, I think now I know the language. I think a big part of this was sort of selection bias, that they were basically accepting students with best grades in secondary school, and then they could produce great outcomes at graduation level, at graduation stage, which doesn't, however, mean that the value added was so high. I don't want to, I don't want to be critical too much, because, I mean, this is going to be public, and
Sure.
I don't want to,
No, I get it.
sound like I'm critical or anything, but it had many great things about it. And, I mean, great things were it really allowed you to be independent, and choose your own path, and do kind of what you want to do. It wasn't forcing you to be good in everything. If you had like a passion or something, you could focus on that. Because I think the part of the school's agenda was, it was trying to produce a lot of like laureates of, I don't think that's something that the US has, but Poland does, national and international Olympiads. I think, International Math Olympiad is something that I think is very famous. So like, for example, in my section, we would have one laureate of the International Math Olympiad, and the expectation was in my high school that you would like produce some in every cohort, basically.
Oh, wow.
It was the kind of students you were kind of admitting, and it was like, that was the expectation. But I was kind of like, I was trying to go always in the opposite direction from the crowd. So I, instead of, I had like a class with a math focus, and I learned a lot of, math at good level for high school, but I didn't want to specialize in it too much, given that everybody else around me was specializing in it. So I went more in the direction of, geography, political science, and even literature. But then having this math background all the time, meaning that, it didn't lose contact with that at all.
Oh, I see. That was the background.
That was it.
The high school was basically these future top mathematicians were coming out of or they were like, it was constantly producing these people that would go into the math Olympics. So you lived inside that kind of rich mathematical environment throughout high school, but you ended up kind of focusing on other kinds of stuff.
Exactly. I mean, and I think part of that was like my sort of, in retrospect, when I think about where I am now, I feel like it would have been better to devote some of the time I devoted to other things to doing even more math. I think that's, in retrospect, probably would have been the best choice. But I really had this strong something about me, I think, when I was younger, and maybe still today, that if I see everybody doing this one thing, I just can't do the same thing that everybody around me is doing. And in Poland, I think, I don't know how it works in the US, but you have these sections, like high school, like classes divided into sections of around 30 people, and you take all the classes together. And the high school level, you actually choose at the beginning of high school in what you're going to specialize. So my class was specifically math and computer science, and this is why you really had mostly people with that interest around.
Well, so when you were in high school, did you ever kind of have any idea of sort of like, well, what you did want to make your life be about? Was econ something that you'd even heard of?
I mean, yes, and part of I definitely didn't think I would be an academic. That I definitely didn't think in high school. One thing one has to be aware of when we talk about context in Poland, I think much of Europe actually, is that you have to choose your major before you apply to college. You don't just get admitted by university and then you just shop around, take classes, and think decide what you're passionate about.
Right.
You pick your major when you apply, and for example, you can apply to the history major at the University of Warsaw, and then econ, and be accepted at history but not at econ, and that's it. And after you've accepted it in history and not econ, you cannot study econ anymore. So I did have to choose economics or something related to economics, more broadly,
In high
finance,
school.
whatever, in high school.
Mm.
And the reason I did was that I knew I was, had this pretty strong math background, but I also was more interested in sort of like, I don't know, you could say like human things, so to speak. I never liked physics at all.
Mm.
And I didn't really want to study computer science. So it seemed like the best compromise in which I was kind of aware that you need to have some math tools. I don't know why I thought that as a high school student, how I knew. But I also knew that, okay, I'm going to be dealing with, humans rather than particles. And that was definitely, something important to me at the time.
Would you have thought of social science, or was it more like, because you even said literature and your dad's a historian, was it more of just you were interested in people, or was it the social science part that you were interested in, or was it neither of those?
I think social science for sure. But then I kind of felt that, so even though my dad was a historian, I kind of always felt I probably, understood like math-based arguments better than, say, like, I don't know, something much more, I don't know, like, I didn't always follow arguments made in the humanities as well as something that is more math based. So I felt like if it's sociology and if it's more like qualitative, I didn't feel like I always really understood the argument as well as I would. But again, we're talking high school right now. So how did I know in high school? I don't know. This is difficult. Later on in college, I kind of felt when we're taking some classes in sociology that I understood economics papers much better than like a much more windy, so to speak. I don't know if there's a proper word in English. Argument in some sociology texts.
Yeah, sure. No, I get it. Or I think I do. So you go to college, but you don't go to so I'm just kind of like piecing together some of these stories you're saying. So you live in a beautiful part of Poland that's got a very historic university, and a lot of your friends go there, but you decide to go somewhere else. You don't go, you're not like with a friend or a pack of people. You go to college and you don't know anyone. Is that right?
That is right. That is right. I mean, my classmates in high school wouldn't go study economics anyway. So it's not like I had this choice of going with a big group of people. That was something that was kind of not happening anyway. So it would have meant staying in the same city, and that would be a big plus. But after having chosen economics, I knew, and I think it's a fact, and I think it's still the case, that if you study economics in Poland, it's got to be Warsaw. I think it's really the case that like I don't regret this decision 1 second. For educational, I think for quality of education, I think it was a much better choice. And also, I think I just felt around the time that probably 18, 19 is a better time to just leave home than a couple of years later. And I think the typical student culture, or in Poland, would be like if you go to college in the university, you in the city you live in, where your parents live. You live with your parents throughout college. And I kind of felt like, yeah, when I'm, I don't know, 23, 24 or something, that's a little bit too late. I want to go to college on my own and like live on my own in a dorm.
Right.
And that's what I did.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, because I guess I was just imagining in my mind. I don't want to put words, but it sounds like you're saying you also have it sounds like you also said, even from being a little kid, you sort of needed to do your own thing.
Yeah,
You
definitely.
kind of expressed it a little bit in terms of this non-conforming tendency, but another way I guess I'm hearing, also wondering is, you're wanting to do your own thing, not just simply do what other people are doing. Is that right?
No, definitely. I mean, I think it's probably still true, but I think definitely when I was a teenager, it was like a huge part of me. Yes, I think yes.
Was your dad like that? Were your mom and dad like that?
I think they're both like that in different ways, but I think they're both like that.
Huh. That's cool. I'm wondering now. Now I'm just thinking about your papers. So you go to college. So what was college like? What was it like there?
It was very good. I think it's different than the US because you take tons and tons and tons of classes, and it's not like you take, I don't know, 4 per semester. You take more, and then there's less of an expectation that you study regularly. You mostly spend most of your studying time is sort of close to the final exams, because there is in many classes no midterms, no anything. There's just a final exam at the end, and you pass, you fail, and there's many students, so like it's not like you get a lot of personal attention. I mean, you can towards the end of when you sort of get some maybe mentors among faculty and whatnot, but like early on at least it's like a many students. Like, I mean, I wasn't ever a student like having an undergraduate experience in a big public university in the US, but I imagine it may be similar. Like you have big classes, right? And it's just impossible to get a lot of personal attention, and so I think a bit, but the advantage was you take so many classes, so you hear about many different things. I definitely knew something about many things when I was graduating, which is good. I mean, I don't know how deep some of that was, but I definitely took many classes. Like the number of I don't know, upper level elective equivalents I would have taken by the time I graduated was much bigger than I see among my students at Brandeis, for example. Meaning, you wouldn't just take, I don't know, one class in labor. It would be like, labor and then public, and then, I don't know, like a couple of, math classes, and, many more than would be expected here in the US. So, and then economic sociology, and then, some classes in politics and whatnot. So much broader array of topics, I think.
Okay. Well, so did you take any econometrics when you were in college?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was separate classes in, a time series later on, in a separate class in panel data, in a separate class in applied econometrics, in a separate class in like microeconometrics. Yeah.
They had all that for the undergraduates? They
did.
Wow. That's not common. I thought we had a lot at Baylor. We don't have anything that's like that. That's not common, right?
I think in Poland it would be, because as I'm saying, the expectation is that you take, I don't know, I think I was taking probably, I don't remember actually, 6-8 classes per semester, right? So you have to fill it with something.
Fill them out. Sure. The professors.
Huh. So, and then I think, and then the department, so I think, I don't know the numbers right now, but I think I could, it would be easy to check. I think the number of professors in the economics department, University of Warsaw, is probably much larger than at, say, the University of Michigan, which is a super large public university in the US.
No, it's bigger.
It's bigger. Wow. I think it's clearly bigger.
Huh. Okay. Right. So did econometrics kind of grab you, or was like all of these you're taking so many classes?
No,
it did not grab you.
It did not. Before I graduated from Warsaw, it did not. I think labor
did. Okay. What about labor? What was it about labor that you liked so much?
Well, I wrote my master's thesis, which is obligatory in Poland, or at least was when I was graduating. I had to write something. I wrote on gender wage discrimination in Poland, and that started my interest in decompositions, which I know that you know about. Yes.
Oh, that's where it comes from.
Decompositions.
Yeah.
Interest in decompositions began to me in like late undergrad. Yes.
Okay, I want us to build to that. That's where I was wondering. Okay, so that's where it's coming from. You were working on decompositions you wrote your master's thesis on Awaxa blinder kind of decomposition stuff, or no, not that?
I mean, just applying them to data, to data in Poland. Yeah, I wasn't thinking about methods much. I mean, I tried to understand them as best as I could as a college student. But yes, I mean, it was a dissertation on wage discrimination in Poland.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. So you graduate college. Do you immediately in college, are you thinking I want to become a PhD economist? Is that something that you're thinking in college?
I think I was, but I don't remember exactly what was my more specific plan, so to speak. So I think back in the day in Poland, it was very common that you do your PhD, you are a PhD student, but you don't have that much intensive coursework as you would in the US.
Yeah.
And the stipends are super low, and many people would, work even full-time, I don't know, in a bank or in a government ministry doing their PhDs. So I probably wasn't thinking as a college student about this like path that you take when you think about doing a PhD in the US in a good department, that you devote to this full time. I was probably thinking about juggling this with I don't know, maybe working in some policy job or something like that. That I probably did. I was thinking about getting a PhD, but I don't know if I was really seriously thinking about trying to do good research for the sake of doing good research, or whether it was more like something to be combined with, other things.
Oh, so the PhD
plans.
was kind of was sort of a normal path that you might end up taking. It wasn't like this. For me, getting a PhD was like, I'd literally never met anybody that had ever gotten a PhD. So except for teachers. So, but it wasn't in my set of friends or anything, something that we would have done. So but it was kind of like you graduate college and the idea of getting a PhD doesn't sound all that.
Well, I think it depends. So it's definitely part of that was like peer effects. I mean, I had, two groups of friends in college, I think. I mean, probably oversimplifying, but like to the extent that we oversimplify that, one group was people who were interested in economics in my college, and most of them were thinking about getting a PhD. And from that group, from people who I was friends with in college, I think, you would easily probably count, 10 people having gotten a PhD, and most of them actually not in Poland, but actually, in many good places abroad. Most of them in Europe, like in Amsterdam, say, or Florence, the European University Institute. But like, there was a big stream of people from my college going to the University of Minnesota for a PhD, mostly doing macro. So, there was one group. So we talked about getting a PhD. We talked about research as, college students, third year, fourth year college. Another group was people who were specifically interested in research, but like across different disciplines. It was kind of like a, student society that wasn't affiliated with my college. And most of these people by now, I think, have a PhD. So I have like many PhD friends from college.
Oh, you do?
Very many.
In economics?
Many of them in economics, yes. But like others, like in history, sociology, literature, many different fields.
That's cool. So do you go immediately into grad to get your PhD? That's
So my fourth year of college, I applied to a bunch of master's programs in the UK.
Yeah.
And the one that both accepted me and gave me a scholarship that made this, more doable was Cambridge. So I went to Cambridge, UK, for a master's. And the deal with the scholarship was that, like, if I, get like sufficiently good grades and then want to continue, I can continue. This was partial funding, so I would probably needed to have to get something more to live. And then I went there, but I actually wasn't. I think when starting there, I wasn't really thinking. I don't know why. It's difficult. I can't really say precisely why that was. That I wasn't really thinking that much about staying. I was thinking more about returning to Poland, which I did eventually. And then I thought that, like, with a degree from Cambridge, it definitely has a very, very strong brand in Poland, probably more so than in the US. So I felt like, okay, this would look cool that I graduated from Cambridge. I'm going to go back and just be in Warsaw, I think. And yeah, I mean that's what happened.
So where do you end up doing your doctorate? Where is it?
Well, my PhD is from the same institution I graduated college, which is Warsaw School of Economics.
Okay. All right. So you go back there. So you go to Cambridge. You write your master's thesis. You go back to where you did your bachelor's. How long were you in the program, in the PhD program?
So I defended my PhD at the end of my fourth year.
You defended it in 4 years?
Yep.
Wow. So did you specialize in econometrics were you making a decision that you wanted to become an econometrician?
So that's something I actually decided. That's probably the funniest part of this whole story, which is that I only decided that I want to do research in econometrics after having gotten some research ideas in econometrics, taking a class at Cambridge, even though at the time when I was taking that class, I wasn't thinking I would specialize in econometrics. So that class, I think there's one class that, definitely changed my professional life, was a class with an applied microeconomist called Tom Crossley. So he is now a professor in Florence, the European University Institute. But at the time he was reader, so associate professor in US language at the University of Cambridge, and he was teaching a class in this trimester from January to March on, I think it was called Topics in Applied Microeconomics. And even though topics in applied microeconomics, that can be pretty much anything, it had like two components. I think 75 to 80% was basically causal inference, potential outcomes and stuff like, regression, IV, regression discontinuity, diff and diff. And then I think the last small chunk was something that I think was, and maybe still is, his research specialty, which is demand systems. So that's what the class was about. And I was taking that class, and the idea of potential outcomes, the Rubin causal model, the Lalonde de Higgin-Warpe papers, which we discussed there, was like at that time probably the most interesting thing research-wise I had ever heard about. It was, to me, it was really super fascinating. And then, a few weeks into the class, I realized about something that wasn't really well understood at the time. In retrospect, I realized that this isn't like a, kind of world-changing result or anything. But at the time, I was obviously super excited. The connection between regression adjustment and decompositions, or thinking about what's the exact connections between Oaxaca blinded decompositions and estimating treatment effects and unconfoundedness.
You were thinking about this in grad school?
I was thinking about that in the master's program. I was taking this class with Tom Crossley in Cambridge.
I thought the master's was at Cambridge.
It was.
Oh, wait, but then I thought you were talking about right now the doctorate.
Yeah, but then I mean, the master's was 1 year, so I came back to Warsaw, and then yes, I was doing
So wait,
research
where
on
was
this
Crossley
topic.
at? Where was he at Cambridge?
Cambridge. Yeah, he was Cambridge.
Oh, got it. Okay, so that's where you were learning the potential outcomes, and that's when you
Yes.
started to see this connect. I see. Okay, so you were thinking in the master's program about regression adjustment and the Waxa-Blinder decompositions as an causal inference estimator in the master's program.
So I was yes. I was.
It was just so that I'm, just so I understand. Because tell me if I'm wrong on this, Tymon. So my understanding is that this is relatively new. Is that right? This connection between a Waxa-Blinder as a technique for studying labor market discrimination, going back to the 70s, and these decomposition methods that even go back to the 50s. And fast forward, estimating the average treatment on the treated using regression adjustment. And my overall sense of the literature is it's relatively newer. And so you were sort of thinking about it as regression adjustment as an estimator at the very beginning of when people even were thinking of it as an estimator. Is that accurate?
Roughly speaking, I think time-wise, it's similar time. I think, if you're very peculiar about things, you can probably find some footnotes, which I did find when I was doing a very detailed literature review, like in, I don't know, like late, 2-3 years maybe before my master's. But it's kind of like, if you really understand the topic very well, you probably understand reading the footnote what the person writing the paper also understood, but nobody else would really, infer it from this
Who
footnote.
Are you talking about?
Doesn't.
Are you talking about Awaxa?
There is. I think PhD dissertation by an econometrician who was Brown previously. Now he's back in Switzerland, called Blaise Melly. So he has that, I think, in his dissertation. And there's some papers, I think by could be wrong, but I think Dan Black and Corfus. I'd have to go back and check in some of my papers.
I feel like I probably I want the listener to understand. Can you explain just real quickly what it is we're talking about right now? This 1 or 2 minute, just sort of like, what are decompositions? What is the Awaxa-Blinder? What does that have to do with causal inference? And then, what is it that you're beginning to see in graduate school that's kind of maybe novel?
Yeah, so the Waxa-Blinder decomposition is a technique that was developed beginning in early 1970s, which deals with trying to understand discrimination, wage discrimination. And the idea is that you run two separate regressions, a regression of, say, log wages on different characteristics for, let's say, male workers, and separately for female workers. So you have two sets of coefficients from two wage equations, and then you combine them in some, pretty simple ways to get a measure of what we could interpret as wage discrimination. Recently you could definitely find some, reasonable critiques of this approach in many ways. I mean, the obvious one would be, well, there's obviously a lot of scope for omitted variables bias. So, just running descriptive regressions is not something that can get you very far, I think, doing research in applied micro today. But in the day, that was what people were doing. And
let me ask real quick.
Yeah.
Why are they doing that? I'm gonna be devil's advocate. Why is Waxa-Blinder saying do it this way when everybody knows if you want to look for evidence of racial discrimination with covariates, you just run one regression. You just run log earnings onto a race dummy with a bunch of covariates. Why are you running two of them? What exactly was the problem? Because I'm assuming that this will help us talk a little bit about some stuff that you've written.
So if you're asking about what exactly was in Ronald Oaxaca's and Alan Blinder's mind at the time, I'm not exactly sure, because I don't remember the details of the motivations of this paper, whether they were talking about heterogeneity or not, because I think the obvious answer today would be if you estimate these two regressions separately, then the wage gap is going to be potentially different for workers with different characteristics, which makes sense. Somewhere at the top of the wage distribution, perhaps the gap between male and female workers' condition characteristics is different than in some low-paying jobs. So that makes a lot of sense. Whether this is why they developed this method, I honestly don't remember.
Heterogeneity, though, might have been, but it's not heterogeneity of treatment effects, right? It would have been there, but they're thinking about heterogeneity. So heterogeneity is in the history of this somehow. Heterogeneity, differences in the workers is somehow a part of this.
It is, but I don't, I cannot speak exactly about I don't want to say very clearly about the intellectual history of this, that it originated because of heterogeneity. I would have to go back and check. But then I think, so this is the method. And then, the common theme of papers using these decompositions was that, they look up the difference in mean wages between two groups of workers, say men and women, and they say, men earn 20% more on average than women, and then they decompose this single number into two parts. One of them would be referred to as the unexplained component, which is a measure of, you could say, discrimination. And then the other would be the so-called explained component, which basically tells us that part of that could be due to the fact that, men and women work in different sectors, say, and maybe they have different average job experience and different education. And part of that is just due to the fact that they're different. I mean, selection bias, basically, in a way, right?
Right.
Again, I don't want to. This isn't something I probably think right now, has been my biggest contribution, because I think I was really excited at the time, but at the end, of course, it's a very simple contribution if you think about that. And other people did this at the same time as well. Was that if you think about a gender dummy in those regressions, it is like treatment. And if you just, in your mind, swap gender and treatment and think about the, estimators that we would use to estimate treatment facts under unconfoundedness, this is literally what these decompositions were about. It's just that for, probably 20 years or so, few people realized that. So my first idea basically in that master's program was, actually the unexplained component of a Oaxaca blinder decomposition is a treatment effects estimator.
Yeah. You would have said that because you're at Cambridge, you're with that professor Crossley, and he's teaching you causal inference, and you're going to write your paper. So you were just very easily just thinking the unexplained part is a treatment effect.
It kind of dawned on me on some random moment. I think many of my best ideas are kind of I don't expect that, 1 minute ago it wasn't in my mind and now it's there, and I'm
had your professor thought of it that way, or is this not all that? I mean, is this not a big insight? To me it seems like now I'm realizing it is a huge insight, but was it not something that everybody would be like, yeah, it's a treatment effect? We haven't framed it in terms of we haven't framed I guess it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's if it is a treatment effect, then the Oaxaca blinder is an estimator, and we hadn't been talking of it, and you don't know what parameter it is, right?
I think the contribution I'm probably in the end I think is maybe more interesting from that time was that in 1980s there was a big discussion in this literature on decompositions, what would be the most appropriate, as they used to call it, non-discriminatory wage structure. That basically those decompositions assumed that, okay, if there was no discrimination, like how would the workers be paid? Like men are now, or maybe like women are now, or maybe in some different way.
Mm-hmm.
And for every like wage structure like this, you would have a different decomposition with a different decomposition into the unexplained and explained components. And I think what I felt was, a perhaps more interesting insight at the time, I think, was that this is literally talking about the choice of the target parameter.
Yeah.
If your reference wage structure is men, then you're estimating the effect for women. If your reference structure is men, you're estimating the effect for women. If it's somewhere in between, you're nearing something like the average treatment effect. And that's my paper in the Industrial and Labor Relations Review, which took many years to publish. So that's why it's been published only like 3 or 4 years ago. But that's something that was in the works for probably 7 or 8 years, and I rewrote it many times.
So I know that there were other writers, Klein, Wooldridge, and you, that have talked about this connection with Oaxa Blinder as an estimator of one of these subpopulation causal parameters, the ATT or the ATU, but they call it regression adjustment. Can you just kind of help me understand what is the history of this regression adjustment then? And then where do you fit into it?
Yeah, so that I'm a little bit less certain about. I think there is a paper somewhere in the early 1980s by Barno, Kane, and Goldberger that's
that guy you just said a minute ago? Or those are the people you said the footnotes?
No, that's different. Oh, there's no connection to Oaxaca Blinder. What I'm saying, I'm trying to think about what's the origin of linear regression adjustment. And at the same time, I think at the end of the day, this procedure eventually is probably so simple that I would imagine that, maybe people weren't fighting all that much about credit for it. So maybe we just don't know who thought about that for the first time. And, maybe a few people did care about it.
It's weird that it's so simple, and I've literally never seen anyone do it. And and then you and I have exchanged so much, and then I've gone through these simulations, and then we're going to talk about your work. It's incredibly problematic if you don't do it right. So many simple ordinary least squares regression with covariates are not identifying what people think they are. So it's funny that it is very simple. Why is it not commonly done? I worry a little bit that the listeners aren't following what we're talking about. Can you tell me just a little bit about what exactly is the regression adjustment estimator, and why is it needed, and versus what people are usually doing?
Yeah, so regression adjustment in the context of treatment effects is literally the same thing that Oaxaca Blinder decompositions are. You just swap men and women, or black workers and white workers, for treated units and untreated units. So you have an outcome of interest, and you run a regression of that outcome on covariates for the treated guys, and then separately for the untreated guys. From both regressions, you compute fitted values, but not just for your estimation sample, but for the entire sample, including people in the other treatment regime. And then basically what that means is that you're using the estimated coefficients from the treated guys to impute what the untreated guys would have gotten had they been treated, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. So from these two regressions, you have two sets of fitted values, not just for somebody, for everybody, for all units in your sample, be they treated or untreated. And then you have those two sets of fitted values. The difference between them for any given individual is going to be your estimate of the conditional average treatment effect, the average effect of treatment for individuals with that specific set of characteristics, of that specific value of the covariate vector. And then you have a choice of what target parameter you're eventually interested in. If it's the average treatment effect, your estimator is going to be the sample mean of the difference in fitted values for the whole sample. If you're estimating the ATT, it's going to be averaged only across the treated guys. And this is very similar to the procedure that most researchers would use in contexts where they're willing to assume unconfoundedness, which is they would just run a single regression of the outcome on the same covariates you would implicitly use in this regression adjustment procedure. But then there would just be a treatment dummy included as a covariate in this regression.
Yeah.
And, we know that there's this influential paper by Angres and Econometrician in 1998 that if you do that and if you assume that the propensity score is linear in covariates, which, by the way, is also a potentially controversial assumption, and there's this paper technically speaking on IV, but the special case is to OLS by Bland-Hoboni, Moxet, and Torgovitsky on IV, that they kind of, very strongly return to the message that this assumption is necessary. And if it's not satisfied, then this whole business of interpreting the OLS estimate as a weighted average treatment effect doesn't work. But returning to Angres, he showed that if you just run a single regression of a treatment dummy, you get a weighted average of treatment effects with weights that are proportional to the variance of treatment. Mm-hmm. So cells where you have, roughly speaking, 50% treated, 50% untreated guys are going to be more highly weighted because that's where you can estimate the treatment effects more efficiently. And OLS is going to be, eventually there's a method that does care implicitly about efficiency, right? Mm-hmm. I think my probably best published paper so far, which was published last year in the Review of Economics and Statistics, is another take on Angres 1998. And it's the first paper that I think has been written that represents the very same estimate from that regression where you include the treatment dummy just on it. It's not interacted with the covariates. There's no two separate regressions. It's just a single dummy included as control. Mm-hmm. It's the first paper, I think, that represents that OLS estimate as a weighted average of not, treatment effects at all the different covariate vectors. There are very many. You can't really keep track of them in most applications. And, if covariates aren't discrete, it's not even obvious how even to estimate the weights. So I represent it as a weighted average of ATT and ATU, the effect on the treated and on the untreated. And, the punchline of that paper is that the weights are, roughly speaking, reversed. So the more units get treatment, the smaller is going to be the OLS weight on the effect on the treated. And that means that we are probably fine running those simple regressions if the proportion of units in both treatment arms is roughly the same. If it's around 50%, 50%, probably shouldn't be bothered too much. But if those proportions are very disparate, then you might not be getting what you think you are, and you're definitely not getting the ATE.
It's funny the way you said that just then, because, and I know that you say that, by the way, the listeners, I think that this paper by Tymon in Review of Economics and Statistics last year is extremely important. I sort of feel like it's one of the more important papers I've seen because
thank you.
Well, because here's why. It's like most people in the planet, if they're going to be claiming something is causal and they haven't run a randomized experiment, what have they done? They ran a regression with controls. That's it. Because they've had, most people now, there's a decent amount of basic regression literacy in the world. And so, people run regressions and they put in controls. And the idea that the regression, even under unconfoundedness, is not an unbiased estimate of the parameters that you probably think is, there probably can't be a more, important thing to say about what exactly most people are doing. But what I thought was really interesting, well, there's a couple of things about that paper, even the way that you said it just then. I would think, as a normal person, not an econometrician, but as a normal person, when I read this paper and I realize that the typical OLS regress Y onto treatment dummy with covariates is not giving me an unbiased estimate of the causal effect, even when there are no omitted variables. I would think the solution, the advice would say, hey, don't do it. But you said, well, if it's 50-50, it's probably not a big deal. But the thing is, if it's 50-50, it's still biased, or it can be, depending on the amount of heterogeneity in the data generating process, right?
It's true. No, of course it's true. But I also, I mean,
we just have so many other things. It's like, you know what? Why say that? Why not just say, the assumptions needed here are constant treatment effects. And last I checked, nobody likes to assume that because you don't know anything about those treatment effects. So why are you assuming it? Just use a robust estimator.
No, I 100% agree. I think there's probably, a question of how best to write a paper, and I don't exactly remember at what point of, it's sort of work on that. This advice, showed up in the paper, but I think, the question is like, how negative you want your paper to sound, whether, you want to write a paper that sort of, also, give some more constructive advice, so to speak, meaning, meaning. So I think, like when I was working on this project, the very beginning, and it also took a couple of years until I reached like a stage where it was a well-written paper. I was, learning, many things on my own in Wales, although I think, I stayed for a Fulbright at Michigan State with Jeff Woodridge, also speaking to, many great labor people there, like Gary Solomon, Todd Elder, Steve Hyder. So it definitely helped me develop the argument in this paper back then. But I kind of had a couple of reactions before my stay at Michigan State then, that people would approach this result saying, yeah, I mean, we knew that, like, of course, OLS assumes constant treatment effect. What's new here? I think, and there was like, you have to understand that that different sort of, groups, so to speak, in the profession, and to some, it would be obvious that if you write a paper in 2010, 2020 that relies implicitly or explicitly on confoundedness, you are going to run a simple regression with no interactions, which is what my paper implicitly criticizes. But you would be surprised to find that there are very smart people also who are either unaware of that maybe, or don't seem to care, who would like come from the point of view of sort of theoretical econometrics, so to speak, and say, of course this method is ridiculous, like you should use one of the good non-parametric approaches that we have and that we know works well on paper at least. And why would anybody ever use this method? Of course it's wrong. This is nothing new to us. So I think I was trying to balance, I guess, this the fact
that I'm not criticizing. Sorry, I did not mean to.
No, I didn't take it. Don't worry. And you can.
Here's the. By the way, I also would just like, and I'm not just saying this. It even comes across in this interview, and it comes across in our email exchanges, but it definitely comes across in your writing. You've got such a nice. Each sentence is just so obviously well crafted. Like I just can tell from reading this restat and from others how much work you went into getting these sentences so nice. I mean, you must work so hard on just revising and getting it very carefully worded. Is that right?
It is. No. I often feel like I'm super, inefficient in revising papers because it takes me so much time to rewrite anything. But if if it pays any dividends, I mean, it won't feel anymore like time wasted, because sometimes it does. Sometimes I feel
it
like
is only 9 pages. This restat is only 9 pages, and it is just so readable, so deep. Paragraphs are just very artistically written. I mean, you've got paragraphs in here. This one paragraph, I'm not trying to embarrass you, but this one paragraph here, I say this all the time to people, and when I give these lectures, where is it? You say, to aid intuition for this surprising result, recall that an important motivation for using the model in equation 1, the equation 1 is regress y onto treatment plus covariance. So just the standard regression. The motivation for using it in equation 1 is that OLS is that the linear projection of y onto d and x provides the best linear predictor of y given d and x, Angerson-Pischke. However, this is the part I love. However, if our goal is to conduct causal inference, then this being the best linear predictor, then this is not, in fact, a good reason to use this method. Ordinary least squares is, quote, best in predicting actual outcomes, but causal inference is about predicting missing outcomes. It's beautiful. It really is. It's just I just read that and I think he worked at those 4 sentences for a while to get that right.
Well, I was very glad that nobody complained about this sentence and said that they disagree with the intuition or something, and that I should drop it or whatever, because I kind of felt that this just really helped my way of thinking about that.
Totally.
But I was worried that there could be pushbacks, but
it's really nice. I think it's a really great 4 sentences in a general. It's really the general description of causal inference, which is causal inference is it really I really think it defends OLS, because what it says is OLS is best at predicting its targets, and this is not its targets in causal inference. The target in causal inference is a target parameter, a causal parameter, not the outcome. And it's just such a great, this restat, the thing that I think is so interesting about it is that this is a result you go through. There's a few papers you go through, and just to kind of set this up, you could have a study, 2 studies could be studying labor market discrimination or something, or some program, some returns to education, or some program on labor market discrimination. And in one study, it's like the exact same identical, 2 different people, same identical program that they're evaluating, but in one of them, the treatment group has 25% of the sample is in the treatment group, and then the other it's 75%, but otherwise it appears like it should be the same. It's the same. And they can find the OLS model it'll be closer to the smallest group that you're studying, right? That coefficient that you're estimating will not be closest to the average treatment. In fact, it gets pulled away. It gets pulled towards the tiny groups. Is that right?
Yes, I mean, so if you have a program in which 25% of units are treated, the expectation based on my paper, and this is a rule of thumb. This isn't like the exact result from the paper. The exact result, I mean, also depends on the condition of variance of the propensity score. But
right.
If you have 25% of individuals treated, you would expect that what you get is 75% times the effect on the treated times 25% the effect on the untreated. Which yes, does reverse the weights you would like to see if you estimate
you would even expect to see, right? It's almost like the common sense with OLS is like, well, most of the sample is this other group, so probably this estimate is mostly that other group. And you're saying
I totally
actually yes. It's like that's right.
It's actually the opposite. That's what the paper says.
Thing, and it is exactly wrong. OLS goes in the other direction.
That's exactly what the paper says, and I think that's when I first realized that sitting.
That cannot be common sense. It's like that.
No,
there's no
it's
way
not.
that is common sense to anyone. No one knew that.
One exception. I present this paper. So this is a funny story. And when I told this to Jeff Woodridge, he said
he knew it.
He totally wasn't surprised that this was the one person. He gave another suggestion who could do the same, but then they didn't when I presented in front of them. So when I was going on the market, I had a co-author, Arun Devani. He's now at Warwick, and he was a grad student at University College London. And I kind of, asked him whether there would be any chance, if I just, pay for my own trip to London, just visit and hang out to present this.
Are you about to say Blundell?
Seminar?
Blundell knew?
Yes. I present this.
I knew you were going to say that.
I present this in front of many PhD students, a couple of faculty from UCL.
I know.
I present this, and then Richard Blundell tells me an explanation of why this is obvious, which I had never thought about, which I wasn't exactly able to follow when he spoke it during my own presentation of my own paper. And this was this was a moment I thought, okay, this is obvious. I'm never going to get a job or whatever. I mean, I had a job, so it wasn't a problem, but I knew I was going on the, US job market.
Yeah.
But then, Jeff convinced me, no, don't worry. And it wasn't obvious.
I got to see the Substack I wrote yesterday about it's called the 2 waves of difference and differences. And I went through this huge, gigantic waste of, probably a waste. I feel like only a couple of people would even care about trying to figure out when certain words started getting used with different diff papers. And I traced it down, and Blundell in the 90s was just so on top of every single little detail. I just could not believe how so early on he is just magnificent. He is just so deeply I've got to, so that I am not remotely surprised, but that's not common.
No.
Nobody else knows it. People like that say that stuff, and then it makes everybody else in the room go, "Oh yeah, it is." And it's not obvious to most.
No, so I was lucky it never happened again, and I think I honestly, and then I don't think he would mind me saying that. So when Jeff Woodridge was telling me, "Don't worry about it," he did say it hadn't been obvious to me. So that was one thing. But also, I think he made it clear that he doesn't think that many other people like. Well,
it must be something with a particular way of thinking. Then what is it about his way of thinking about ordinary least squares that would have made that so demonstratively obvious that to someone else just as skilled that it's not? What's the difference? I'm asking you to speculate about a person's mind, but is there something about certain people that would see those implicit weights within ordinary least squares that other people, when I learned OLS, we didn't learn anything about weights. It's the thing. I don't remember. It was always just kind of like exogeneity and, Gauss Markov and all these kinds of things that we would learn that didn't lead me into this world of thinking in terms of the implicit weights within any of these regression models. But I'm not an econometrician, so I don't, I've had to learn it later.
No, I don't really. I'm not really sure what was the reason that Richard was singled out as a person who could do this. I think it could be as a perception that people might have that who's sort of has this super sharp mind for thinking on the spot. I felt it was more about being able to see things immediately in seminars rather than something particularly specific about the topic, but I
wait, okay. Why did you come up with this idea? Maybe I should ask that. Where did this come from? This came from the work you were doing on the Awaxa blinder?
Yes, it did. Yes,
I was thinking
okay. So it was. It came from a proof in one paper I was reading that was dealing entirely with Oaxaca blinder decompositions and doing some algebra with them. But the paper wasn't making any connections to potential outcomes, and I think at the time the authors of that paper weren't aware of that connection, as most people were not at the time. And sort of, I had already known about the sort of, average treatment effect interpretation of all those different, peculiar decompositions they were working with in that paper, and I understood what the interpretation would be in the context of treatment facts.
Yeah.
And then I kind of, when I thought about the algebra that they showed and connected this to the stuff that they didn't know and I did, it was like the original idea was immediate. There was a lot of work, needed to be added about the actual assumptions that, came into place, or how to deal with, multiple covariates, because the paper was originally about a single covariate. It assumed that there is only one scalar x. It wasn't like a covariate vector. So, but basically that's what I said about decompositions earlier. Like, there was 1 minute in my life where at the beginning of that minute, I didn't know this thing about OLS. And then at the end of that minute, I kind of felt, okay, I just discovered something.
Yeah.
Something really remarkable. And I think, so this is one thing, I'm kind of like, with time passing, I understand that, few people today do research using decompositions anymore, and I'm not sort of selling these results on decompositions. The earlier ones are super important, although I, put a lot of effort in these papers, and I really did enjoy writing them. But this result on regression, I'm definitely very proud of. So I liked it a lot.
I think it is extremely important result, and it's changed. It's really changed. It's left a pretty deep dent in my brain, and I'll go through this simulation that I've created with friends, PhDs from Harvard, or and they'll be just watching, and they go, and this guy told me, he goes, I just feel like you just made me realize everything I got my PhD in is wrong. So it's like, it was just this kind of like, and I just was like, I'm telling you, here, I send my do file to people, and I go, just look at it. Well, I need to let you go. It has been so nice talking, and so it's such a delight. I hope that we can talk some more soon in person.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I really enjoyed that, and I hope that I didn't come across as sort of too randomly rambling about things, but I enjoyed it a lot, and it's a big pleasure. Thank you.
It's wonderful. It's so nice to meet in person. Well, I'm looking forward to us talking some more in the future.
Me as well. Thank you so much. Thanks again.